Welcome at another episode of Sassy with Tessie. Today we are talking about basic emotional needs. This comes from schema therapy, but is very interesting and easily usable regardless of your interest or knowledge about schema therapy. And today we are talking about what are our five basic emotional needs and how can we use them within treatment with clients. Three reasons why I think it's interesting to dive into this topic and to watch the video is because, first of all, if you have done your bachelor, master, or postmaster degree focused on adults, you probably don't have a lot of education on developmental psychology. Secondly, typically the focus is on where goes development wrong. But what about healthy development? What are healthy emotional needs? I think it's really helpful to have that clear and within a framework. And this framework can really be helpful for that. And last is that as a therapist, I think one of the favorite questions or a lot of what is frequently asked questions in clients is, what do you need in this moment? And people often find that very hard to articulate or to give meaning and words to what they need. This can also provide a language for you and your clients. We need language. And before I'm gonna dive more into the framework that is used within schema therapy, it might be a good idea to think about a moment for yourself. Like, what do I think that are healthy emotional needs? What does a child need to have like a healthy development and a healthy emotional development? So it's not about the physical needs, like having a roof above your head, having clothes, having access to food. No, this is really about the emotional needs. And we're gonna use this framework, and that's from schema therapy. And the five basic emotional needs that they kind of build the therapy around are safety and connectedness. That's like the first and our most primary emotional need. Then we have the need for autonomy, that you can be your own person, a need for realistic boundaries, a need for self-expression, and that it is safe and okay to express certain emotions. And last but not least, spontaneity and play. So the need for playfulness. We're gonna start with the first one. That's the need for safety and connection. This is our most primary need. So if we would say, like, for healthy development, which need is most fundamental, it is this one. And it is about having one, ideally both, or multiple caregivers that you have a safe and stable connection with, that is predictable. And by doing that, by providing that, a child can kind of feel more safe, connected to you, and eventually also the world around it. So it is about a sense of safety and belonging. The other primary need is the need for autonomy. And sometimes these can struggle a bit with each other. Like, on one hand, a child wants to be and has the need to be safe and connected, but also wants to be their own person. And that can happen from a very young age. And it is kind of healthy that with time, the autonomy of a child and teenager expands gradually. But for a child, it is like needed to feel that they can be their own person, that they are allowed to have their own hobbies, that they can feel competent in things, that they learn that they kind of learn to expand in the world from a place of safety. And eventually, this is about forming their own identity. So that happens, of course, in childhood, but you can see that really popping off often in adolescence. Then the third need is the need for realistic boundaries. And this is a very important one and can be quite forgotten when you ask people, what do you think that children need? But it is very fundamental for a child's development that there are healthy boundaries. And what healthy is meant that the boundaries are not too strict and rigid, but also that there are boundaries. So maybe when you were growing up or in when you were a teenager, you might looked towards one of your classmates who were allowed to do a lot of things and they could throw parties or do all kind of things from a place of jealousy maybe, but not having a lot of boundaries or being able or not like having proper boundaries can be quite neglectful, and that's actually not healthy, and children and teenagers need boundaries. The last one, almost the last one, is the need for self-expression, and this is more about the freedom to express needs and emotions, so that a child feels like, hey, I can express my emotions, I can learn about my emotions here, and without really restrictive norms or circumstances. And the last one is the need for spontaneity and play, so that a child feels that it is okay to play, that there is room for it, that it is encouraged by parents. And this is often like a very, it is a bit of the last need. And we see that often when the first need is not met, that it has like an effect on all of them. But the need for spontaneity and play lasts through a lifetime. So we are talking now about development looking backwards at childhood and adolescence, but these emotional needs don't change. So you, me, every adult you see, we still have these 5 emotional needs. And a lot of the problems where people struggle with are like a consequence of having one or several of those needs not met. In hindsight, in childhood and teenagehood, but it can easily be continued throughout adulthood, or maybe just through changes in adulthood. And therefore, it is a very kind of a simple but really interesting framework to have and to work with, because even though we have kind of an understanding about what healthy development is, this can really make it some kind of in an organizational framework that you can easily use within therapy. So you can see them again here, and it is important to know, like, it is in the base of schema therapy, but I think that just having this knowledge, regardless of which kind of therapy you have, or even if you don't have like the basic course in schema therapy, you can still easily use this within any form of therapy. And how can you use them? I think there are 3 ways that they can easily be used, and also that I use them for myself in my practice. And the first one is the one that we're actually going to discuss today, and that is like, which exercises can I incorporate in therapy with clients to talk about emotional needs and to build up that need language. Another way where I feel like this is a very helpful one is that even if you don't discuss it directly with your clients, learning more about these needs has really helped me with my practice, that if I see a new client and I can hear like their story, it often goes quite automatic that it sounds like, oh, there was like barely space to develop a sense of autonomy, or like, oh, there were not boundaries at all. That sounds kind of neglectful. It's not something that you necessarily have to discuss with clients, but it is quite easily to put like certain problems as a consequence of not having proper needs met in childhood and adolescence. And it's also interesting that to see like the measure in which it has been not met, because what we often see in clients with like more issues or more severe issues is that it seems to be that the needs were not met in a larger instance or larger periods or like in a greater amount. So even if you don't use it directly into therapy, it can still be an easy framework to use, kind of to understand like, okay, my child has had difficulties in childhood, but like how are they within the basic emotional needs framework. And the last one is a great one that I would recommend to each therapist, is to use it for your own life. Like, we're adults now, but like, hey, how is it with my basic emotional needs? Do I need something? Do I need to change something? Do I have enough playfulness in my job or in my life? Do I have enough safety in my life? like all these different areas. You can also use it for yourself, so that you can stay as healthy as possible with this job, that even though I absolutely love being a therapist, it's also important to take good care of yourself. So that about how to use them. Let's dive a bit more into the real therapy practice of it. So the first exercise is actually quite a simple one, but can still be really helpful to kind of build up that need language, and also to kind of help your client connect with what they need. Because having language for it is needed, but also that more connection to, okay, what am I experiencing? What is going on in my life? And this is like a quite easy way of making that translation, which can be quite hard, especially at the start of therapy. For example, like, can you think of a moment in the last week where you felt really happy or content? And then clients start to describe a moment, and then you can ask, okay, and which basic emotional needs were met in that moment? Which is often like, oh, there was a sense of safety or connectedness, or oh, there was like playfulness. And the same you can ask, like, was there a moment that was very hard or difficult, or where you felt like sad or ashamed? Which needs weren't met in that moment? And clients can often quite easily say, oh, I didn't feel connected at all to the other person, or I felt quite alone in this moment, which is like both more about connectedness, or like I had a manager who was like quite controlling of me. Then it might be the need for realistic boundaries. So here you can see some examples. And I think this is quite an easy way of building up that skill with clients. Another one is to really ask them more about, like, I often do this more as a homework assignment. I must say this is often at the start of schema therapy that I really like to use this, but also sometimes with clients where you don't do like the full schema therapy, or not a full trauma therapy, but you do want to give them more insight and knowledge about what is normal development and how is that within their own childhood, like the 5 emotional needs. And you ask your client to fill in, like, in which sense they believe when looking back at their childhood and adolescence that need was met, and which memories come up. So it is more about giving them a bit of idea about the needs. And sometimes clients make a differentiation. They're like, yeah, in this time it was really not met, but otherwise it was. So clients can kind of come up with their own idea and framework about their childhood and adolescence, which can sometimes be a great topic opener for how that might relate to current issues. Here you can see an example that is filled in. And I think, again, it is about learning clients to get language for what they're experiencing, what they need, or which needs is not met. And a last one that I really like is that you can easily create a jar, or like if you do it online, that you do it with like an online dice, is to give every need like a number, and that you roll the dice, or you create a jar and a client has to pick one at the last 5 minutes of the session or 10 minutes. And you're going to come up with like an exercise for the upcoming week that is focused on getting that need met. So it can be the need for connectedness, or the need for playfulness, or need for realistic boundaries. And I think it's quite a broad scope of experiences that clients can pick from, that they can train with. And it also makes it a bit more playful within therapy, which I think is just modeling of the importance of having spontaneity and playfulness within life and within work, within therapy. So these are all quite simple exercises to cover a quite complex theme for clients, because if you ask most clients, what do you need? It can be very hard and now they can just pick one. And that's often a very easy way of training their capabilities. So yeah, I'm quite enthusiastic about using this, regardless of your experience or training with schema therapy. Here you can see some examples about exercises focused on the different basic emotional needs, but I feel like most of the work that you already do with clients might fit within these. So it's not like new science or like very new exercises probably. And the last exercise that I wanted to show you, it's not really an exercise, but it is more how you can use it is by using the Young Schema questionnaire. There is like, they are now at number 3. It is a shortened version. Is that you kind of work backwards, because in schema therapy, the idea is that you form schemas as a consequence of not having those basic needs met. So if you measure the schemas, you can kind of work backwards. So, clients score very high on these schemas. That means that there are probably unmet needs in these areas. So it's a bit working backwards, and I wouldn't recommend necessarily this strategy because this I think is a better strategy if you're actually going to work with schemas and with schema therapy. And clients don't really interact with the basic emotional needs. So they don't build up that need language from filling in this questionnaire or learning about schemas eventually. But sometimes sometimes talking about the basic emotional needs is more than enough. And you don't have to make it any more complicated or extensive. And here you can see like a very short version of the basic emotional needs. It can be easy to just print them out or send them to clients at the start of therapy. And what I hope is that if you watch this video is that it at least gave you a bit of sense about what is healthy development, that there is a framework for it, and that it can be a very easy way of communicating these sometimes more difficult topics with your clients because you build it within that framework, and the importance of meeting your emotional needs also as an adult and also as a therapist. So take good care of yourself, and I'm wishing you a great day. Bye.